Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
But in an unusual situation, the remainder of the economy is relatively stable, even though the financial sector is so troubled, and that's unusual. At other times when we've had these types of difficulties, the financial sector has also roiled the underlying economy. Right now, or up till now, it really hasn't. And so I look upon that as perhaps a little bit of a gift. Maybe we should take the time to get this right. If we are not going to get it right, then I think we do run the risk. I mean, ultimately, the underlying economy will suffer if we don't fix this and fix it correctly.
Okay, so you are saying that some type of bill does need to be passed?
I would be in favor of this bill if we would add to it some of the regulatory changes that are necessary at the FDIC, things like changing the fair valuation of assets so that banks, the so-called mark-to-market phenomenon, so the banks aren't failed just because they're something is not saleable right now doesn't mean it's worthless. So
Congressman,
do one more. On it.
Congressman, we've got to break. Do a 5-minute segment with us and explain it to us, because I'm here looking at pieces of it, and it's a lot to read over. We've seen some previous versions. I'd like to get your expert take on exactly what this bill will do and when will it pass, if it's going to be passed.
Before you slip into
Representative Michael Burgess is our guest, Republican from the 26th District, up by Fort Worth here in Texas, and we appreciate him coming on such short notice. Sir, to me, and it's been called this by many others, this is economic terrorism. They're not stupid in Congress. They're not stupid at the White House. McCain's not stupid. Barack Obama's not stupid. We see all of these, Secretary Paulson running around saying, pass this or there will be a depression. Now, talk like that, anyone knows, is what will cause a crash. And so to me, I don't think we can pass this bill because it's economic terrorism. So can you speak to that specifically? And then to talk of immunity, is that in the newest bill where Paulson and others and all these company heads are given immunity for anything they do, and it can't even be reviewed?
Well, actually, I hadn't seen that provision. It is disturbing. I mean, the Secretary should be, I think, more circumspect in his discussion. You shouldn't hear a bank examiner talk that way. It only leads to difficulties that otherwise may not be encountered. So that's the first thing. I'll have to tell you, I haven't gotten to the point of the bill that has the immunity or protections. Not to my knowledge, but that I have not been all the way through it. So that's something I have not yet seen. Things that are missing from the bill that we'd like to see in the 80s, the FDIC here in Texas, for example, could go to a bank that looked to be getting into trouble or very nearly in trouble and provide them with what was called a net worth certificate. This was a paper that was essentially a debenture given to the institutions. They could carry on their balance sheet as capital. There were some things they had to do in exchange for this. They had to allow the bank examiners in and practically live at their bank to make certain that they did clean up their balance sheet and that they were careful about processes going forward. But the reality is the former head of the FDIC, William Isaac, who was chairman in the 80s, told us that he was able to fix $100 billion, what was thought to be a $100 billion problem, for under $2 billion using these methods.
That's right. It looks like they're asking for, quote, more money than they need if it's just for the subprime mortgage and jumbo loan problems. I found it from the version that we saw in the middle of last week, sir. Let me read it to you from Section 8. Decisions by the Secretary pursuant to the authority of this Act are non-reviewable and committed to agency discretion and may not be reviewed by any court of law or any administrative agency. That's only one part.
That's Section 8?
Of the last version that the public was allowed to see, yes, sir.
Okay. I've got the version that we got last night in front of me, but I probably, in the interest of time, I'm not going to be able to run through that. I don't have it up where I can do it.
I understand. No, I understand. I'm just wanting you to give us your take on that. What was in there? Does that sound good to you?
No. Obviously, that sounds like you could cover up a host of problems with that. Now, there were some things that were taken out of the earlier versions that I think it's great that they were taken out. And again, I applaud my side for doing that. I applaud Senator McCain for standing up at the White House and saying, I'm not going to let the House Republicans be rolled on this. I just wish we'd taken it maybe one or two steps farther than we were able to take it. But,
well, let's talk turkey then in the time we have left, sir. And I'll give out your House website for people to check it out. We appreciate your time. Obviously, if this isn't passed, then if there's a depression, it can be blamed on whoever didn't pass it. But then if it does pass, people can pass the buck and say, well, we at least tried. But bottom line, if 95% of the American people are against it, if they're trying to rush it through and they're fear-mongering, there's a responsibility not to pass it. And I think that constituents would support someone that pointed that out. So I mean, your take on that statement.
Well, I just couldn't vote for it. I couldn't vote for it in good conscience to allow myself to be reelected. I mean, it violates the principles down to the core. I'm not saying that I would not go against the will of my district if I really thought the country was threatened and I needed to make a tough vote to save the country. I hope I would have the courage to do that. And I didn't run for Congress to win elections. I ran for Congress to do the right thing when the time came, and the right thing as I saw it. Right now, the right thing to me is let's send this bill back and keep working on it because it's not right yet. I'd say send it back to committee, but it didn't go through the committee. I've heard Democrats complaining that Marcy Kaptur herself, we didn't get to go through committee. It didn't come through financial services. No hearing, no markup. Nobody got any input. It's just up on the website at 6 p.m. on Sunday, and you better vote yes by noon on Monday. Because we've got a holiday coming up and people have to get home.
Well, they shouldn't leave. The Congress should stay in session.
No, we shouldn't leave. That's what we did all of August. We shouldn't have left because we hadn't done anything about energy prices, and we stayed, and it worked. We got something done. Ultimately, that may be undone under a new administration. Do you think
it's going to pass today, Congressman?
I have to believe that it probably is because no one's leaned on me that hard to vote against it, which means they likely have the vote.
Wow. Let me just say bye to you during the break, and then we'll be right back for everybody else. Stay there. Congressman Burgess. Representative Michael Burgess talked about basically martial law declared in the House, the normal rule suspended as the establishment, those that engineered the current economic crisis, want basically even more power and trillions of dollars is what most of the financial experts are saying, not $700 billion. The congressman held over because he has some key information and some regulatory fixes that are being promoted by a lot of different economic experts that he thinks the public should be made aware of. But what about accountability? What about some people being investigated or some people getting in trouble, not just on the brokerage and banking side, but also regulators? Because it looks to me like we've got a lot of regulators that weren't enforcing current laws. Can you speak to that?
Well, I can tell you that in August of 2007, when this thing first began to surface, subprime problem first began to surface in a big way, that was the time to begin looking into some of these things. I don't know what the SEC has been doing over there, but it would certainly have been appropriate for the investigatory bodies in the United States Congress to stop chasing Harriet Miers and Karl Rove halfway around the planet and bring some of these guys in there and ask them what the dickens they were doing before the horse got out of the barn. There was an opportunity to fix this a year ago, and no one seemed to be willing to take the trouble to do it. The other thing is that we're constantly criticized for Republican, you're a deregulator, that's what caused this mess. No, there's plenty of regulations. The problem is the regulators weren't regulating the regulations that they were supposed to enforce, and no amount of new regulations is going to fix that. And I referenced Sarbanes-Oxley, that terrible bill that was passed the year before I got here. People all over my district complained to me about that because small and medium-sized businesses are treated the same as huge businesses, but they've got to fill out the same forms and pay the same amount of accounting and legal hours that sometimes can go into the millions of dollars for a small business to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley. Where was Sarbanes-Oxley where was the Sarbanes-Oxley requirement that these things be reported in transparent fashion? And you're right. Why hasn't someone been fired? Why hasn't someone been held accountable? And if some of these guys that ran some of these businesses into the ground, why are they continuing to be paid? Why aren't they facing charges? I mean, that's what people are telling me. Where is the accountability?
Okay,
and
so from the...
We have been distracted by every type of political theater up here since the Democrats won, and as a consequence, we're just not doing our job.
Congressman, who needs to be prosecuted? Who needs to be investigated?
Well, I think the investigations need to be done. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the banking laws that well to say I know who should be prosecuted. But if there are people who did things wrong, who shifted data on their books, who reported things that weren't accurate, that's what Sarbanes-Oxley is all about.